Now, the big questions for the new government of President al-Sharaa are, can he guarantee a multi-denominational Syria in which minorities feel safe and secure? Can he control his security forces, which include many, many militia groups, some of them pretty wild and wacky groups too? And also, can he bring a sense of reasonable justice and accountability in Syria? And those questions will be forefront of his mind next week when he goes to Washington. And as it stands in this first bout of killings, which I investigated from March, no one that we know of has been brought to trial yet.
Next week, President Trump will host the Syrian president at the White House. UN sanctions have been lifted against Ahmed al-Sharaa ahead of the visit, which heralds a new era for Syria after more than a decade of civil war. But the building of a new Syria has not been without significant bloodshed. The Times special correspondent Anthony Loyd has been to the country to learn how the remnants of the Assad regime have been treated. He joins us now. Morning, Anthony.
Good morning.
It's so good to speak to you. Your piece at thetimes.com this morning does make for some pretty shocking reading as to what is happening and seemingly what is going slightly unchecked, uncontrolled by way of violent aggression and murder, frankly.
I think when we assess this, you're very correct. I mean, there's an issue of violent aggression and murder and massacre and sectarian killings, but the greater issue is one of how to control that, to prevent it from reoccurring, but also justice. So I just want our listeners to refresh themselves, if we can, over the context to these killings. So the Assad regime was overthrown in December last year. Now, that was a monstrous regime, and that's important to say because it sets the emotional and recent historical context to what happened. In the decades of the Assad dynasty, you've got between 300,000 and 400,000 Syrians missing. That's missing. You've got as many as 500,000 killed. The majority Sunni, and the Sunnis are the majority in Syria. About 500,000 people killed in that civil war. Then, in a prison apparatus controlled by the Assad regime, and this is an largely Alawite regime, Alawite minority, you've got as many as 190,000 prisoners disappearing, and they're not expected to reappear. So that is the context of recent state killing up until the overthrow of Assad. And I say that because that sets the emotional context of what happened next. In early March, along the Latakian coast, and this is an Alawite heartland, so Alawites, an offshoot of Shia Islam, a minority who had previously ruled Syria under Assad. In that coastline, which is where most of them live, there were a series of killings of pro-government security forces, government security forces, and as many, perhaps in early March, as a couple of hundred fighters allied to the new government were killed. Then in response, you get a call from various militias online for a general mobilization to crush what they call the fulul. Fulul is an Arab word for, used quite disparagingly in Syria, for the remnants of the regime. So next, you get 200,000 Sunni fighters descending on the coast, and over a period of basically about 3 days, March 7th to March the 9th, killing about over 1,400 people, the majority civilians and the majority Alawites. And this is going house to house along about 40 communities. In some areas, they just killed the men they found. In some areas, they just robbed people. And in some areas, they, degraded captives they took, posted images on them online. They're being forced to bark like dogs in some cases, and then murdered them. So what happens then is that President al-Sharaa quite rightly calls for a national inquiry to investigate what has happened and to bring the guilty to justice. But before that national inquiry releases its results in July, you've got two more bouts of sectarian killings. About 1,600 people killed in the south, in Sweden, where Druze, another minority, were fighting Sunni militias, and then an attack on a Christian church in Damascus, in which 23 people were killed. Now, the big questions for the new government of President al-Sharaa are, can he guarantee a multi-denominational Syria in which minorities feel safe and secure? Can he control his security forces, which include many, many militia groups, some of them pretty wild and wacky groups too? And also, can he bring a sense of reasonable justice and accountability in Syria? And those questions will be forefront of his mind next week when he goes to Washington. And as it stands in this first bout of killings, which I investigated from March, no one that we know of has been brought to trial yet. Now, the Justice Minister said last week that trials would begin, they were imminent and that they would be public. But so far, no one yet has been brought to trial. And some of the people we believe arrested have already been released. So that's where we are at the moment. But the big questions is, can President al-Sharaa control his forces in the future? Can minorities in Syria have their security guaranteed? And can some form of justice and accountability be extended not just to former regime elements, but also to Sunni factions who have embarked on killing sprees of civilians?
Anthony, it is always great to speak to you. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
That is Anthony Loyd, the Times special correspondent, who tells it brilliantly and writes it brilliantly as well. You can get Anthony's reporting at thetimes.com with your digital subscription and on the app this morning. It is a crucial week, actually, with the Syrian president heading to the White House with those questions to answer. There is still, I think it's fair to say, optimism about what this new government can be and can represent, certainly in stark contrast to the Assad regime, but there are serious issues to address.
It's also going to be interesting, the fact that he's going to the White House. Donald Trump is entertaining so many foreign leaders. He is being involved so much. And yet when you look at what's happening at home right now, with the crisis of flights being grounded, people not being paid, you wonder how long the US public will be willing to see Donald Trump parading around effectively on the international stage, not dealing with the issues at home.